All right, so vintage standard. We're staying with 1981, Tom. I'll let you if you want to run on this one. I can let you
Yeah,
just sort of give some facts on this one. A band that is very near and dear to my heart. Really is one of the bands, if not the band, that kind of kickstarted this whole
yeah,
metal obsession I've had. This was one of the records around that time. Although I will say Pyromania was the first, and then got into this basically at the same time. I almost
yeah.
kind of
Most
connected
people
these
did.
records,
Yeah,
But we're talking, of course, the mighty Def Leppard and High and Dry. Go ahead, take it away.
yeah. And the one thing about this one is that the leap from On Through the Night to this one was monumental. Like there was no
Hmm.
build up to the third album, and then we made it. Like the leap was huge. Obviously, Mutt Lange was involved. They were touring AC/DC tours, and we can get into that synergy in a moment. But I think what happened with Leopard is with this one is they just had great management. We spoke about Riot before. They just had great management. They were really caught up in the new wave of British heavy metal, even though they were never a heavy metal band. They always said that. They just kind of, well, let's keep going on this ship because it's going in the right direction. But I think when you listen to On Through the Night, which I think is a great album, I think that's actually an underrated album because the production is not great. It's too many songs on it. But damn, this one is just arguably their best album. I mean, you could have this discussion all day long on a throwdown or
Sure.
something. But I remember hearing Pyromania. I missed this when it came out because I was only getting into Metal 81 and I missed it. Then obviously Pyromania came out. And I remember the day I bought Pyromania. I just remember walking into the store and buying it. I heard whatever song. And then obviously then that set off the chain reaction and going backwards. And then I discovered this one going, holy shit, this gets better. And then obviously
Mhm.
On Through the Night and then we know what happened after Pyromania. But with the influence of these guys, obviously Pete Willis, like what the fuck was he thinking? You put down the booze, buddy. We're about to launch here. But this album, we get into it a little bit, but damn, like Let It Go, Switch, Bringing on a Heartbreak, just classic songs, dude.
I don't think there's a bad song on this record. I mean, it's kind of funny. I was reading there was some reviews where like,
Mm.
well, it's again, is it Pyromania? Well, I would say it's a 1B. Pyromania is 1A.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
just a tiny
I
step
think it's
below it.
fair.
Yeah. Like I said, this was basically, Mutt Lange, obviously, he really kicked it off with Back in Black, AC/DC,
Yeah.
right? This was sort of his second record with this sound. And you can kind of tell because, the one thing between On Through the Night and this is, like you said, first record, more your classic new wave of British heavy metal,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
This a lot more AC/DC influences on this record all throughout. They were still, I think, honing their sound. You could see they were just adjusting it, right? Kind of make it a little more, like I said, a little less speedy, even though there's plenty of fast songs on this record.
Yeah.
But they were definitely commercializing a little bit. And obviously, like you said, the production wise, Mutt Lange coming in, I mean, Mutt Lange just changed to me the overall trajectory of rock and metal music, bottom line, with that sound. And same with you, Pyromania. I remember the first time hearing I was only about 5 or 6 when this album came out.
Yeah.
So by the time Pyromania came out, I was about 8, 9 years, about 8 years old, I believe, and really into, just die hard into metal, what was coming on the radio. My
Yeah.
brother was the first one. He's like, dude, have you heard that song by this band called Def Leppard? I'm like, no. He's like, oh, dude, when it comes on again, man, you got to hear it. It's unbelievable. And it was the single at the time in New York that they had on the radio was Foolin'. So it wasn't Photograph or nothing. It was Foolin'. That was the
Oh,
first Def
okay.
Leppard. But when I heard that, just the production, everything. I mean, obviously, I was so used to listening to my dad's old records, Stones and the Who and Zeppelin and the Beatles,
Yeah.
and even back to the 60s with the Byrds and all that stuff. And so I was so tired of hearing this old sound. I'm like, God, everything just sounds like old. When I heard Foolin' on the radio, that just blew me away because of just, like you said, the production. And so after that, I was just like, I can't wait
Yeah.
to hear
You
more.
got to go back. Yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing was, it was interesting because they were playing, I remember, they were playing Fool and Photograph, but they were also playing Bringing on the Heartbreak. And I
Mhm.
was thinking to myself, like, okay, this is all in the same album, right? So when my dad was in a record club and it came in, right? And so I was like, oh, this is great. We've got this now on vinyl. So we would play it. I'm like, where's Bringing on the Heartbreak? I had no idea that they had another album
Yeah.
out before that. I was just getting into everything. And sure enough, it was interesting because they released, I looked into it, they actually released a remix version of it to kind of coincide with the production and
Yeah,
sound of Pyromania. So they kind of sort of and it actually kicked it back into the charts into like the 60s, 64 or whatever it was, 61 I think it was. But yeah, I mean this record, I've almost gotten into it, like I said, more over the last 5+ years than it was back in the day. I would always go back to Pyromania, but now I'm almost kind of picking this up first because I think I've just beaten Pyromania to death just for 40 years of listening to it. But
yeah.
this album, one of the things, like you just mentioned a name before, Pete Willis.
Mhm.
I think that guy is so underrated. I mean, obviously, because remember, he was also, he wrote, even though he wasn't in the band when Pyromania came out, he wrote a bunch of
He
those
sure did.
songs,
He sure did.
you know? And
Yep.
so you could just see the difference. Obviously, after he was gone and Phil Collins, came in. I'm not knocking anything with Phil. I mean, he's a good guitarist and everything, but they were a different band, different sound, and everything. I just think that he gets overlooked because the one thing that Def Leppard to me does, they were sort of the '80s, or my generation, if you want to call it the X version of AC/DC, because they just played great radio-friendly hit songs that just rocked and kicked ass, though. They were fast, they were speedy, but they had that pop sensibility, and Joe Elliott
Mhm.
just had that high voice that was, that was what everyone was doing back then, but everything just fit. This is just a perfect band. Those first 3 albums, I always said, Def Leppard's first 3 albums to me, I don't know how there's only, I think, a handful of bands out there that have done better with their first 3 records than Def Leppard, in my opinion.
Yeah, and listen, they still play some of those songs live, so that's a testament to the quality of the songs that they wrote in their late teens, early 20s. I think Rick Allen was like 18 or something, whatever he was. He was just a kid who wanted. But you
Yeah,
mentioned the AC/DC influence. We can hear, obviously, Joe was singing high, has got the gravel in his throat, but then Back in Black was only about a year old at that time, still selling bazillions of records by the day. I
yeah,
think
good
For
point.
Those About the Rock came out like a month or two after this album, so maybe maybe a singular, Let's Get It Up or whatever had been released at the time. So like AC/DC were arguably the biggest band on the planet in 1980,
Mhm.
81. Just the sheer volume, the sheer units being sold by Back in Black and huge tours, whatever. So it was inevitable that. And then Joe's voice, then when he went at it, had that gravel that Brian Johnson had.
Yeah.
And the Geordie
Mhm.
influence, the North of England influence, and all that kind of good stuff. But when you go back on it now, I mean, it charted actually pretty high for an unknown band. So
Mhm.
obviously some of the groundwork can be done with On Through the Night. I think it was 38 in the US, 26 in the UK.
Mhm.
So they were getting ready. Unlike you spoke about Riot previously. They never quite. They were getting ready for the launch, and then Mutt Lange was coming into his prime. They were young, they were hungry.
Mhm.
There was money being put behind him by the label. I think they were on Vertigo at the time, I think. So
Mhm.
whoever was, so they were in a launch pad, and obviously we know what happened after that. But they're still selling out 20,000 seaters arenas tonight based on the first 4 albums, if you just want to call it the first 4. But I don't think anybody gives a shit after that, to be honest, about Def Leppard.
No.
And there's some really, I mean, when I listen to new Def Leppard, I'm talking about the last 15, 20 years. If I can pick more than 5 songs per album that I think are great songs, I'm lost, because I listen to
Yeah.
5 or 6 and it's gone, it's out. But these albums, all the way through, every time.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, that's understandable. I mean, if you look at most bands, right, you tend to wanna hear the stuff off their first, like, 3 records. I mean, the
Yeah,
classic stuff, right?
yeah,
And like you said, but the difference, and what's interesting about their career is obviously their biggest record ever was the 4th one. Obviously, Hysteria was their
yeah,
biggest
yeah,
seller, most commercial. Like you said, this record, you could see that the new wave of British heavy metal influences were basically, okay, we're just transitioning into a different band.
yeah.
And listen, and that was their goal. They've never been shy of
He
talking
didn't
about
want to
that.
be a heavy metal band. He always
No.
said that, and they're not.
Yeah.
But obviously, they had heavy rock songs, and they were just lumped in with the usual suspects for the album. But and obviously, then I think they got backlash because of that. They got backlash from the metal fans, and they
Uh-huh.
were kind of in limbo for a little band. They weren't quite a pop band, and then they pissed off the metal fans. But then obviously they found their way, accordingly in due course. But they were kind of on record as saying we're not a heavy metal band, but they
Yeah.
kind of were. They kind of were
Of
with some of
course
those
they
songs
were.
on it.
Oh, of course, come on. I mean, they were, again, to me, there's a lot of these songs. The only, like I said, I would say negative. I wouldn't say it's a negative thing. The only thing I wouldn't say that's extremely positive is, like I said, there are a couple of songs on here that are kind of like blatant, AC/DC. Like, I mean, even like the title track.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just a straight up AC/DC. I would say
100%.
pretty much kind of a carbon copy
Yeah.
AC/DC track. And that's my only, like I said, negative comment if I'll say anything. But of course, listen, they were, like you said, they were very young. I mean, like you said, they started as teens. People forget how young they were with On Through
Yeah.
the Night. And as good as that album is, you do think, wow, these guys played like this when they were teenagers. This is
Well, you know
unbelievable.
what? I bet you they were
You know?
heavily influenced by Mutt Lange too, because they weren't young enough to make their own decisions,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Oh, of course.
But
And like
Mutt
you
Lange said,
said,
"Here's what
yeah,
we do, guys. Here's what's popular. Hey, Joe, sing like this." You went, "Okay, Mutt."
of
So there's
course.
no doubt
Yeah.
that happened. No doubt that happened.
Well, I mean, like I said, they were signed to a major label. Here they are, youngsters that coming to the United States. They're blowing up here and around the world.
Mm.
I mean, and so they're on top of the world. You're just going to go, yeah, just keep, go ahead, tell me what to do. Obviously, I'm not going to question you. You're making,
No.
like making our sound great. You're steadily increasing our fan base and record sales and so forth. Yeah. Again, though, we're gonna. Well, I would say not so much song wise, but let's look at that album cover. I mean, that was put together. So Hypnosis, right? That was
Yeah,
the big,
that's right. There's a great
company that was
documentary on
making.
Netflix or Prime or whatever
Yeah,
about
I know.
them.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
phenomenal. Like the albums
Yeah.
they did through the years, the name of band they were involved with them. Not obviously shit ton of different genres, not just rock and metal bands, but they were involved in everything. I still not quite sure how this was even cool for the time, but
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is
No,
what it
I
is.
mean, again, it's again, it didn't hurt them, I would say. I mean, I don't think it helped them. Again, if you're looking at this record in the store, even On and Through the Night, okay, it's okay, but neither
Yeah,
one
with
of
the guitar,
those.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this one though, you're gonna look at and go, "What is this? What is this band? This doesn't look like a rock or metal record, does it?" I mean, a guy diving into a pool, and then whatever's around that, some guy
Yeah,
looking up, and this is one of the worst album covers too. I mean,
yeah, it's terrible.
it's not a, this isn't a mascot like Tior with Riot, but it's still a terrible record cover. And like I said, Hypnosis did some really awesome covers over the years, a lot in the '70s. I don't know what they were thinking on this one. If I don't know, even know the record company or the management, I'd be like, we're not doing this. But I
No.
mean, and I think it could have hurt a little bit because this is a phenomenal record. It didn't, you know, it's interesting to me because I wonder what would have happened if Pyromania didn't blow up the way it did. Because like I said, this
Yeah,
record did well, but it did better because of the success of Pyromania. But you think of Pyromania, if that didn't do that well, maybe we don't. Def Leppard's another. I wouldn't say another Riot, but they're definitely not Def Leppard as we know them today.
yeah,
Possibly,
I think that's fair. And the album cover then, of course, 81 was important. We know that. I mean, I'm just
yeah.
looking at some of the albums like Diary of a Madman, Killers we spoke about, Mob Rules, Motley debut came out, Diary of a Madman, Moving Pictures, Denim and Leather, The Elder.
Mm.
So I mean, like these albums are coming out at that time. Metal was pretty much exploding, but that's just complete ass. I mean, that cover is just, but yet it's an iconic album cover. Like if you saw somebody walking towards you with that T-shirt on, you're going to spot that a mile off.
True.
You know,
It might not look. It's not a good looking cover, but you're right. It is
it's
memorable. Yeah,
100%.
it'll stick in your head. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And when I think of the songs, like I said, I mean, dude, you listen to some of what I love about this record is they've got some guitar on this record that you don't hear on any of their other stuff. I mean,
yeah.
some of the leads and some of the bridges and breakdowns and stuff. I know they hit and run. I mean, you said, I mean, Let It Go is kind of like on Pyromania. It started with
It
Rock
is.
Rock Till You Drop. It's a great song to kick the record off. No, no, no. What a great finish to the record that is.
Yeah, right.
Like I said, I don't think, like I was reading someone that gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm like,
Yeah, it's
oh,
bad.
it's got great, but it's got some misses. I don't think there's one miss on this song.
No, listen,
I mean, on this record.
I would see. We've all seen Leopard, a dozen times over the years at some point or whatever, right? And
Mm.
there's still a couple of songs from this that they play live, particularly Switch 625. They go dun, 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 dun,
Mm.
dun, 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 dun. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you can just get the goosebumps because this big boom is coming
It's getting
at
ready
you.
to
So
come. Exactly. It's a
it's getting
buildup.
ready. Yeah, and that
Mhm.
that song is 1981 for fuck's sake. Like it's like decades ago. Like I mean, damn. And
Yeah.
that's the power of those songs that they can still do that live, maybe an octave or two lower for good old Joe. I think he's doing okay though. And Def Leppard as an entity, as a band, as a touring, whatever. I know they they always, they've been with Kiss and Motley and Journey, whoever, over the years. But I've seen Leppard, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 times over the years. They bring it live. They're still doing it. Is there backing tracks in there? Of course they are. Is Joe as good as he was? No. Joe was never a great singer anyway. If you listen, he was never a great singer. He just suited the music perfectly.
Yeah.
But even today, I think he's still good. He's kind of 6 out of 10, but he's not terrible. And they're not. Yeah, I've never walked away from a Leppard show and go, nah, I think they should stop. They can still do it live.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't expect. Look, I mean, no one can expect him to hit notes like that. I mean,
no,
that's the problem about that era of music. It's like, listen, Steve Perry. You think he's going to hit those notes? No. So the problem is obviously that was music. That type of that vocal approach was only suitable for a limited time period.
Right.
As a singer, your voice, especially when you're touring as much as a band like Def Leppard did, there's no way you're going to hit notes like that. Year after year when you're touring nonstop. It's just not going to happen. I think most people don't really care. I mean, I think they're doing a residency in Vegas, so they are.
That's actually recent. That's very recent. Yeah. But I think what happens is when a band gets to a certain level, they almost get a pass. Like I saw AC/DC last year in Nashville, Titan Stadium, 70,000 people there. Like Brian Johnson did not sound good. Like that hurts me to even say because I'm a huge AC/DC fan. But in one sense, I almost get, you know what? I'm having a great time. They're all rocking out. They're all literally in their 70s. Like they're fucking, well, except for the stand-ins, the fake AC/DC guys. But the real deal are up there. It's almost like, okay, Brian, you're not 35 anymore. And remember, he wrote those songs same year, like a similar year to this. So same with Def Leppard and whoever, you kind of give them a pass when they're not quite hitting the notes. As long as they're good and they're good enough, I'll take it. But listen, we've all, flip side of that is you've seen, Paul Stanley is an example with Kiss, and he was just done 10 years ago. Like he just dragged shit out of his own legacy. So the bands need to know when to stop. And I think Def Leppard are not near that yet. And they're still going back to this album, High and Dry. They're still playing songs of that today in their live set.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and here's the thing is no one cares. Like people just want to see them play it. We're in a period right now, as we know, it's this is what people want. They want to listen to this stuff. Look, when I put this on vinyl, this record, I'm just like, it takes me, back. I mean, it just back to the 80s,
right, and that's right.
And that's what people want to feel and experience. Again, they just want to get that feel in them, like, oh, this reminds me of sitting around on a hot summer night, pumping that thing on as a kid.
There's an emotional connection to it.
Absolutely. There's a lot. Exactly. There's a complete connection to it. And so it doesn't matter if, he could hit notes or not. I mean, none of these guys can. I mean, none of these guys could do that. That's not the point.
Unless Glenn Hughes, and that's
people just different story. Yeah, that's different. But again, Glenn Hughes wasn't a full-time singer in every band he played in, so he hasn't used it up. I mean, you can't, but yes, I mean, he's a phenomenal singer, and he can still sing, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, so I mean, High and Dry, Def Leppard, outstanding record, another vintage standard. I mean, like I said, we could have picked any of those 3 records. There's no point in picking Pyromania. Everyone, I think, knows that. One of the things we want to do on here is not just pick the obvious ones. We try to dig a little into the ones that are kind of overlooked or undervalued or so forth.
And I think that's we're not going to do it. We're not going to do an expose on Back in Black. I mean,
exactly.
That, right? If anything, we might do it on Fly on the Wall or something. It's like pick the obscure ones that people don't, and then we kind of resurrect some interest. And that's kind of what the goal is here. So I always like, Matt, that these conversations are like sitting at the bar, a couple of guys having a beer, shooting the shit. This is what this is, effectively.
Yeah, but we do our homework. Guys are shooting at the shit at the bar.
I got my notes right here, man. I got my notes.
There you go.